The landscape of education has undergone a dramatic transformation since 1980. Student behavior, once viewed through a simplistic lens of obedience and compliance, is now understood to be far more nuanced. This evolution in understanding has necessarily led to a revolution in disciplinary approaches, moving away from punitive measures towards a framework that prioritizes restorative justice, mental health, and equity. This essay will delve into the dynamic interplay between societal shifts, evolving student behaviors, and the ongoing quest for effective and equitable disciplinary practices. From the rigid zero-tolerance policies of the 1980s to the increasing emphasis on restorative justice in recent years, the journey has been marked by both progress and setbacks. The following sections will explore this evolution decade by decade, highlighting the unique challenges and opportunities presented in each era. We will examine the societal, legal, and cultural forces that have shaped student behavior, and in turn, the way educators respond to it. Our exploration will not be merely a nostalgic trip down memory lane. Instead, it will serve as a springboard for envisioning a future where schools are not just places of learning, but also nurturing environments that foster the holistic development of every student. This essay is a call to action for educators, policymakers, parents, and students to work collaboratively in constructing a more just and compassionate educational landscape. By understanding the mistakes of the past and embracing the lessons learned along the way, we can create a future where discipline is not about punishment, but about guidance, support, and empowering students to reach their full potential. This requires a fundamental shift in perspective, one that recognizes the inherent worth and dignity of every child and seeks to understand the root causes of their behavior, rather than simply reacting to its outward manifestations. To understand the shifts in student behavior and discipline over the past 4 decades, it is crucial to acknowledge the profound societal transformations that have occurred during this time. The rise of technology, changing family structures, and evolving cultural norms have all played a significant role in shaping the experiences and expectations of young people. The advent of the internet and the subsequent explosion of social media have had a particularly profound impact on students' lives. While offering unprecedented access to information and connectivity, these technologies have also introduced new challenges, such as cyberbullying, online safety concerns, and the constant pressure to maintain an online persona. This digital saturation has blurred the lines between the schoolyard and the online world, making it increasingly difficult to address behavioral issues within the confines of traditional disciplinary structures. Furthermore, the traditional family structure has undergone significant changes, with a rise in single-parent households, blended families, and dual-income families. These shifts have often resulted in increased stress and pressure on families, which can manifest in children's behavior. Moreover, changing cultural norms around gender roles, sexuality, and diversity have challenged traditional power dynamics and expectations within educational institutions, necessitating a more inclusive and responsive approach to discipline. The increasing awareness of mental health issues among young people has also been a defining factor in recent years. Once stigmatized and often overlooked, mental health is now recognized as a crucial component of overall well-being. This recognition has led to calls for greater support services within schools and a shift away from punitive disciplinary measures that fail to address the underlying needs of students struggling with anxiety, depression, trauma, and other mental health challenges.
The 1980s marked the beginning of a new era in school discipline, the era of zero tolerance. Fueled by concerns over rising crime rates and a growing sense of unease about youth violence, zero-tolerance policies were implemented with the promise of swiftly and decisively addressing disruptive behavior in schools. These policies, often characterized by harsh and predetermined punishments for a wide range of infractions, were touted as a way to restore order and accountability to the classroom. However, the reality of zero tolerance proved to be far more complex and often counterproductive. By focusing solely on punishment and failing to address the root causes of student misbehavior, these policies disproportionately impacted marginalized students, particularly students of color and students with disabilities. The emphasis on punishment over prevention created a climate of fear and mistrust in many schools, undermining the very relationships that are essential for effective teaching and learning. The 1980s also saw the rise of standardized testing as a primary measure of academic success. This increased emphasis on testing created immense pressure on schools to raise test scores, often at the expense of other important aspects of education, such as social-emotional learning and the development of critical thinking skills. This narrow focus on academic achievement further marginalized students who were struggling academically or who came from disadvantaged backgrounds. The legacy of the 1980s in education is a mixed bag. While the intention behind zero-tolerance policies to create safer and more orderly learning environments was understandable, the execution often fell short. The over-reliance on punishment, the disproportionate impact on marginalized students, and the failure to adequately address the underlying causes of student misbehavior created a system that was often more harmful than helpful.
The 1990s witnessed a growing awareness of the shortcomings of zero-tolerance policies and a nascent movement towards more holistic and restorative approaches to discipline. Educators and policymakers began to recognize that simply punishing students for misbehavior was not an effective long-term solution, and that a more nuanced understanding of student behavior was needed. This shift in thinking led to the exploration of alternative disciplinary practices, such as conflict resolution programs, peer mediation, and restorative justice circles. These approaches emphasized repairing harm, rebuilding relationships, and fostering a sense of community within the school. Instead of simply meting out punishment, these practices focused on helping students understand the impact of their actions, take responsibility for their behavior, and develop empathy for others. The 1990s also saw increased attention paid to the role of mental health in student behavior. The understanding that students' emotional and psychological well-being are inextricably linked to their academic and social success began to take root. Schools began to implement programs and services to address issues such as bullying, trauma, and substance abuse, recognizing that these factors could significantly impact students' ability to thrive in school. While the 1990s marked a significant departure from the punitive approaches of the previous decade, the movement towards more restorative and holistic practices was still in its infancy. Many schools continued to rely on traditional disciplinary measures, and access to mental health services remained limited for many students. However, the seeds of change had been sown, paving the way for further progress in the decades to come.
The 2000s ushered in the digital age in full force, with technology rapidly transforming the educational landscape. Computers became commonplace in classrooms, and the internet provided access to a wealth of information previously unimaginable. While these technological advancements held immense potential for enhancing teaching and learning, they also presented new challenges for student behavior and discipline. Cyberbullying, once confined to the schoolyard, found a new and often anonymous platform in the digital world. Students could now harass and intimidate their peers through text messages, social media posts, and online forums, often with devastating consequences for the victims. This new form of bullying presented a unique challenge for educators, as it often occurred outside of school hours and beyond the reach of traditional disciplinary measures. The rise of social media also brought with it new distractions and pressures for students. The constant connectivity and the pressure to maintain an online persona could be overwhelming for some, leading to anxiety, depression, and difficulty focusing on schoolwork. The lines between students' personal and academic lives became increasingly blurred, making it more challenging for educators to address behavioral issues within the confines of the school day. Despite these challenges, the 2000s also saw a continued push for more restorative and equitable disciplinary practices. Schools began to implement anti-bullying programs, develop policies to address cyberbullying, and provide professional development for teachers on how to navigate the digital landscape. The focus on mental health also continued to grow, with more schools recognizing the importance of addressing students' emotional and social well-being.